What if I told you one of the greatest adventures of my life didn't begin on a mountain? It began at a train station. Most people fly across America. It's a faster way of travel. It's easier. It costs a hefty amount of money, though. And I kind of wanted to experience every mile. I wanted to watch America unfold outside my window without having to drive. I wanted to slow down. I wanted to have time to reflect and sit by myself on the train and just look out the window and watch life pass me by. Little did I know, this trip would become one of the greatest lessons of my life. Welcome back to Roxy's World Adventures. I'm Roxy, your humble host, and I am here to take you on a journey today. This is one of my personal journeys. So this is my tale from the trail. And I'm going to talk about my time on Amtrak, going around the United States. And this was a fantastic trip for me. My route, I started in Baltimore. I went down to DC and changed trains. And then I went up to Chicago. Then I spent like 4 hours in Chicago. Then I got on a train and went all the way down I took the train all the way through Kansas, through Colorado, through New Mexico, through to Arizona on the far end. And then I got off the train and onto a shuttle that took me to Vegas. And I explored Vegas, visited one of my good friends, Katie. Katie, shout out to you on the podcast. Shout out. But yeah, I went out to visit her for a couple days. And then I took another shuttle from Vegas to California, where I rented a car and drove down to Joshua Tree and explored Joshua Tree National Park. And then I drove down to San Diego and I was there for a couple days. I explored some beaches. I explored around San Diego. And then I got in my car and I drove to Tucson and I went to Saguaro National Park. And that was beautiful. And then I got on a train in Tucson, took the train to San Antonio, where I went to visit my cousin, Allie. Shout out to you. Woo, Allie. Visited my cousin for a little bit. And then I was supposed to get on a train and go to New Orleans and do a whole swamp kayak. And I was so excited. Well, my train something happened on the train line and I had to switch my train because I wasn't going to be able to go down to New Orleans. So I ended up staying an extra night in San Antonio and going straight from there back up to where I was there for a longer time. And then went from there over to Cleveland, where I rented a car and went to Cuyahoga National Park, which is like right outside of Cleveland. And then I was able to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, as you all know, music is a part of my sanity. No, I love music. So going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been on my bucket list for years, and I've never been able to make it out there. So I was finally able to go, and it was amazing. And then I went to DC, where I switched trains, and then back up to Baltimore. Choosing the train was very important to me, mainly because it was something that I have never done, that I've always wanted to do. And I had been, for the past 2 years, I had been flying down to Puerto Rico during this time. So this was back this year in January, end of December into beginning of January. And usually I take that time and I fly down to Puerto Rico. But this year I wanted to do something different. And we were having issues with flights in America, along with gas prices, flight prices. Everything was just jacked up. So I decided to do something else, but I wasn't sure what. And all of a sudden, this ad popped up. It was just the perfect timing for this ad. And it popped right up on my social media from Amtrak saying, we have a $500 USA Rail Pass. You can go to 10 stops in 30 days. And I was like, sign me up. I want to get on that train. So I ended up buying this ticket, and it was an adventure. So today we are going to be talking about the adventure of that and what trains teach you about patience, the amount of freedom you get, my curiosity of the places in the United States that people don't get to usually see if they're not on the train, and just human connection. My purpose in life is dealing with human connection. I like to inspire people and connect with people on a different level. So we're going to go into why I chose Amtrak. And I needed to do a cheaper form of travel that would still take me places that I've never been before. And that has been actually a New Year's resolution for me, is to start the new year in a new place. So every year I'm going to plan on starting the new year in a new spot. Flying gets you somewhere, but you're not really experiencing it. You're just sitting on a plane for a few hours. And I've always wanted to do a train trip. One of my friends went on a train trip and said that it was something that he would definitely do it again. And I thought about it and I was like, I really want to experience that. That seems like a lot of fun. So this just kind of gave me the opportunity to go for it and do that. I wanted to slow down. I needed to slow down. Unfortunately, I was dealing with some grief. I had a friend pass away in December, and I needed some time to get away and slow down. And I thought that the train was the perfect way to do that. I did get the rail pass, and it did not include sleeper accommodations. That is one drawback of the rail pass. Everything else was perfectly fine. But if you're going to do an Amtrak train, please get sleeper accommodations. You get your own bathroom. You don't have to deal with everybody. You don't have to sit next to somebody who is going to invade your space. Not that people did that to me, but sleeping is easier because you have a bed. You're not sitting in a reclined chair, which, I mean, is okay, but I would much rather lie horizontally. So that was definitely an issue. Another issue that I tend to have, which is kind of funny because I actually try not to be high maintenance when it comes to trips. However, this trip I was going on for like a little over 2 weeks. And I was going to very different climates. So I needed a little bit of everything because I wasn't sure what I was going to experience. And like when I was in San Antonio, it was hot. It was like 80 degrees. And then I went from there up to 32 degrees. So it was just crazy temperature wise, like the temperatures that I was going through. So packing efficiently was a huge necessity because I knew I had to bring a lot of gear with me. And I knew I was going to 3 national parks. So I needed to bring a backpack. I needed to bring a water bottle, possibly 2. Some of those water bags. I needed all of my camera gear. I needed my GoPro and all of that gear, all of my hiking equipment, snacks because you're allowed to bring as much food as you can on the train as you can carry. So if I can carry a bag on my shoulder of food, that can go on the train. So I was like, all right, that could save me some money. So I tried to bring on as much non-perishable snack stuff that I could. My expectations were met to a certain extent, but honestly, there were some drawbacks. I assumed that I would be okay with sleeping in a reclined chair, and it ended up not being the right scenario for me. Now, for other people, I can see if that would be like a good scenario for them. Also, I was sleeping on the train some nights and in a room with a bunch of other people. People were coughing, people were sick. I mean, it was just, one of those things where it's just like, okay, well, I'm in this confined space with all of these people that are, coughing. Sometimes the toilets would get clogged and we wouldn't be able to unclog them until we got to a service stop. Smelly, man. Smelly. I would hang out in the observation car if that were to happen. I think it only happened like twice during my trip. So I got kind of lucky with that. But oh my gosh, you don't want to be in a car with the bathrooms on the first floor that all of them don't work. You have to go into another car for that. Yeah, that's rough. The clarity of I know this sounds kind of bougie, and honestly, I wouldn't be as annoyed with it if I weren't trying to take pictures, but the clarity on the glass was not up to par. Like they need to wash their windows or something with the train. Even if it's at the station stop, at least do something where you like clean it. I know they used to. I don't know what happened since then, but the dirt and grime kind of clouded up my pictures a little bit. So that was like an expectation that I thought I was going to get that I didn't really get, but it's not. That's minuscule compared to the other ones. And then for the most part, everything was what I thought it was going to be. The food was delicious. Oh my gosh. I ate dinner every night that I was on the train. I had dinner in that dining car and it was delicious. If they had dinner in the dining car, sometimes I was on the trains where they didn't have dinner served to the people in the cars. So they would only serve anything to the people that had accommodations, which I mean, that goes into the other expectation of like, oh, well, I'm going to have a good dinner on the train, but some of the trains didn't have that. So I had to figure out what to do instead. They did have decent food in the cafe. So it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't a good dinner that the people in the accommodations were getting. But the food was delicious. The staff were superbly nice everywhere. I mean, every train that I got on, except for TC. So I'll go into that. But most of the trains that I was on, the staff was fantastic. And they were very helpful. They tried to do the best they could with the overflowing toilets and the smells and all of that stuff. Like they were very accommodating to all of us, which was great. And then stuff that exceeded my expectations, the views. The views. Wow. When you get to Colorado and you're just going along the river, I mean, it is something out of a movie. It was just gorgeous. I took so many pictures. And then New Mexico, beautiful. Arizona, even Arizona, like the monuments and everything. God, I was loving it. The views that were along in West Virginia going up to Chicago, gorgeous. Everything that was, I mean, I think it went down through Virginia and then up through West Virginia. So, I mean, it was just picturesque. And then going down the southern route from Tucson to San Antonio was gorgeous. It really did exceed my expectations. I mean, I got to see things that I rarely ever see. I saw wild horses running through randomly outside the window. I was like, oh my gosh, there's horses. And they're definitely wild horses because it was an area that didn't really have a lot of structures around. So I was like, there's no way this is a ranch. But it was just absolutely incredible. It's so amazing. That's something that's going to be ingrained in my memory for a very long time. So I'm going to go into the trip and things that occurred. Some of it's great, some of it's not, but we'll get into all of it. When I was the morning of the trip, I was so excited. Little nervous. I'm always a little nervous before I go on my trips, but I was more excited than nervous because this was something that I've always wanted to do. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, I mean, I actually wrote out an entire 2+ week itinerary for myself with ticket codes and everything. Like I really had everything all out on there. And I also want to give a thank you to Dr. Vermani. This is a shout out to you because she taught me how to do those itineraries and make a good one so that I don't have to worry about where I'm going, what I'm doing, what my accommodation code is, that thing. I was getting a ride down there from my mother gave me a ride to the train station. I was very thankful because I didn't want to park my car in the garage for over 2 weeks. It just seemed like a lot of money to do that. So I asked her if she would give me a ride and pick me up. And she said, yeah, sure. Why not? So I got in the car with her, got to the train station, I want to say an hour early because I just wanted to make sure that I had everything and was able to bring everything with me that I needed to bring. And everything turned out fine. I ended up walking around the train station for a little bit in Baltimore, and it's Baltimore Penn Station. It's a nice little station. It's very small. There's not really a lot going on there, but I talked to some of the people that work there and just kind of got a lay of the land and stuff like that. I ended up chatting with a few people that were sitting right next to me about getting on the train. They were like, oh, where are you headed to? And I was like, Chicago. And they were like, what? Yeah, I'm going to be on this train for over 24 hours. And they were like, wow, that's so cool. And they were going down to Virginia or something. So they only had, a few hours or so on the train. But it was really cool just to talk to people and get to know them in the station and everything like that. I got on the train finally. They called our number. Some of us were like, are they ever going to call us? They called us, I want to say they called us like 15 minutes before the train came, maybe less. And we got out of there within, it was a very short stop. We were there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. And then we rolled right out. We went through a lot of the city first, and then we went down through to DC. And we stopped in DC for a little bit to switch trains. And in DC, I don't know if it's just big cities where people have attitudes. I don't really know. But the people that were working at the station in DC were not very nice. And the people on the train in DC were even worse. They were just, the staff were not very nice. That was the only time when I had issues with the staff was when I was in DC. But we weren't there for that long. We were probably there for, I don't know, maybe an hour. I don't know. To me, that's not very long. But yeah, then we started going down south. So we went through Virginia. And I want to say it was, I think it was Arlington, but a man came and was able to sit down next to me. And we got to chatting, and he does social media stuff for healthy lifestyles. And I follow him on Instagram now, and he follows me back. But we were chatting about all of that, and he was like, "Oh, I need to pick your brain on, Instagram and all of that stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, just message me anytime. I'm open to letting people know my strategy and what I do." And it was great. He got off in, I want to say it was definitely Southern Virginia. It was further down. But when he got off, he was like, "It was so nice to meet you. Thank you for chatting with me." And then he left, and I was able to sit by myself for the rest of the trip. And that was awesome because I could lay down across two seats. So I got really lucky on the train. Apparently, usually it's not like that. But I was able to lay down and actually get some sleep. So I realized that adventure almost begins before reaching the destination when I was on the train. It was really different. It was a totally different vibe than being on a plane where you can freely get up and move around whenever you want to. Everything was a bit slower. You can go and hang out in different cars. You had your only seat, but you could freely roam about and explore different cars if you wanted to. After boarding the train, they scan your ticket, and then there's no security. I mean, you don't really have any of that. Time kind of slows down. I lost track of time every single day I was on the train. I was like, "Man, it's already 4 o'clock. What? How did that happen?" And that happened quite a few times. I was like, "Oh my gosh, the sun's about to set. I need to go to the observation car," just because I was enjoying the peace. I was doing a lot of reading. I was actually reading this book right here for one of my podcast sessions that I did earlier. This is about the Shenandoah murders. And I was reading this on the train next to a very lovely woman that was going from Chicago all the way to, say she was going to LA, but she was on the train from Chicago all the way down, which was really cool. And she was like, "What are you reading?" "This book," and I just showed it to her. I was like, "It's a true crime novel. I'm kind of into that." And she was like, "I can't read those things." It was so cute. But yeah, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of photography, obviously, a lot of video. I did some journaling and just observing. I met a lot of people on the train, especially in the dining car. It's kind of cool the way they set it up. So basically, what they do is they take down your reservation. So if you have a group of people, you say, "Okay, I want a reservation for 3." And then the head of the car will put you down and say, "Okay, we have this time or this time available." And then you just kind of go based on that. I did a couple of lunches in there too. It was just kind of cool the way that it was all set up. But if you're one person, you get put at a table with a bunch of other one person. So you get to meet a whole bunch of people while you're on the train, and you're in the dining car, and you're just like, "Oh, well, I'm going here, I'm going there, whatever." So you get to meet all these people that are traveling. And it's a totally different environment than when you're on a plane sitting next to somebody. Usually when you're on the plane, you're not really having a discussion. You're just kind of there. Sometimes you will talk to the person on the plane next to you, but in the train, it's a totally different vibe. You guys know you're going to be sitting next to each other for hours, and hopefully they're cool. Usually, the woman that was sitting next to me on the train from Chicago down to Vegas, she said that she does that. I think she said it was twice a year or something, but she always meets really, really nice people on the train. And it kind of got me thinking that I was doing it all wrong. Maybe I should be going on the train. Maybe not for that long of a period of time without having the accommodations, but I would love to do just regular sitting in the seat again for a shorter period of time. I think it would just be fun to do it one more time. Maybe go that way to the Pacific Northwest or something. Look into that. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of people that you meet on the train, and most of them are very kind. I never had a bad interaction with anybody on the train. And people share a lot of stories. I got a lot of stories from a lot of different people, and it was really cool because I always ask people the weird, interesting questions, and they always give me the full scoop, the full answer, which I love because I just like to learn something interesting about someone instead of asking, where are you from? What's your favorite color? What kind of job do you have? I'm asking the more difficult questions. And it was just cool to meet people that, weren't scared to give me the answers. I got to Chicago. The Chicago train station is massive. So it's actually kind of funny because when I was going to Chicago, I was thinking to myself, oh, it's a big city, but hopefully it's not going to be filled with people that are always constantly on the move, blah, blah, blah. It was filled with the nicest people. The nicest people were in that train station. Everybody loves life. I feel like Chicago was a much bigger version of Annapolis or something, where everyone's just kind of like chilling. It's on the water, but nobody's in a rush. And I liked the vibe of Chicago. Like, I would definitely go and stay there for a long period of time. I'm kind of sad I didn't get more time there. Next time, I will definitely plan a longer trip. But the station was it was incredible. And I was only there for, I think it was like 4 hours or something. So I went down and I made friends with the bartender. I think it was the only bar that's in the station, even though it's massive. But I made friends with her and she allowed me to sit at the bar for a couple hours and just hang out, eat, read, have a couple drinks. But it was cool. She was really nice. I asked her about where I could go to explore when I came back for a longer period of time, and she gave me some info. Unfortunately, it was raining when I went back the second time, so I didn't really have a lot that I could do. I really wanted to go outside, but it was also really cold and windy and rainy. So it was the trifecta of let's not do this. But anyway, met her. She was a lovely human. And then I was able to get a pass to go and hang out in the lounge for Amtrak for like a couple hours because apparently they're not able to give you that pass until 2 hours ahead of time, which is weird. But anyway, so I was able to get it. And then I got on the train to go all the way to Arizona. Chicago is basically one of America's railroad crossroads. So you can go south, you can go east, back down to Baltimore, or on other routes east, you can go west, and you can go north into more of the northern US, like right outside of Canada and into Canada, which is kind of cool. It's a major hub for transportation in general. I mean, Chicago's huge for flights as well. It's got a massive international airport. But it was just very cool walking through and seeing how massive everything is. So everything is just twice the size of anywhere else that I've been. The Christmas tree in the middle of Union Station was 10 times the size of me. So everything was just massive. It was really cool exploring around the station, seeing all the architecture. I didn't get to explore the outside very much. So I didn't get to see the river. I didn't get to see the lake. I didn't get to see much of that kind of stuff. But I was really excited to get back on the train and head out west to Vegas. We left, I want to say it was like in the afternoon. Might have been like 2 or something. And mind you, this was at the end of December. So the sun was setting around like 4:30 each day. So I didn't really have a lot of time to see the sights every day. So I had to wake up when the sun came up and kind of go to sleep whenever. I probably went to bed at like 10, or at least tried to, every night on the train. Going out of Chicago, you go straight from beautiful city skyline to fields. And it's just endless fields. Fields, fields, fields. And I think I got one picture of crossing over the border from Illinois into Kansas. And that was the last picture I got before we got to Colorado. So basically, there's a long stretch there where I couldn't see much, but the fact that it took so long to get to these different places, it just made me realize how big our country is. America is huge. And that trip was about the equivalent of 2 days to get from Chicago down to the end of Arizona. It was a wonderful trip, though. Probably the most beautiful views that I had the entire trip was on that stretch. But then once we stopped, I got on a shuttle and I went up to Vegas. And there's a point on the trip where you go up this big hill, you cross over a bridge, and then you're kind of going down, and then you go back up a hill, and then you hit the top. And as you're coming down and you see all of the lights of Vegas. And it's just like, wow, we're not even anywhere close to there, and you can just see it. The whole thing is lit up. I didn't spend any time on the strip during that trip. I've been on the strip multiple times. I did not go down there during this trip, actually, because as I said, I wanted a slower, more adventurous trip that didn't involve constant stimulation. And that's what Vegas is. I mean, they're basically pumping whatever air they're pumping out that keeps you wanting to stay awake. But I stayed on the outside of Vegas, which was really nice because you could see the lights, but you didn't have to deal with all the noise. And my friend Katie has a really nice house out there. They have a pool and stuff like that, so I was able to swim. I mean, it was like 70 degrees when I was there, maybe the high 60s, but still, I was swimming. I was in the hot tub, and it was January. So, I mean, it was a fun time for sure. And sometimes these quiet moments are the most memorable. I was able to spend some time with her. She moved out there, I want to say the middle of last year. So I haven't seen her in a while, and just to see her then was really nice. And we got to catch up and stuff. We ended up going ATVing in the Valley of Fire, which was so much fun. And we went to Red Rocks, which we didn't really get to explore that much because we didn't we didn't do the research and we didn't reserve our spot to go in. So we were able to see like the outside of it, which was still cool. But anyway, I got on a bus and I headed down to California, and right where I got dropped off, I was able to rent a car and I drove down to Joshua Tree National Park. And in Joshua Tree, I mean, it's pretty wild. You feel like you're entering a different world. There's just like massive boulders everywhere and strange looking trees. And it's just kind of like an endless desert area. And it's so cool. It was probably mid 70s temperature wise, which makes it one of the great national parks to go visit in the wintertime because the temperature's still warm. It was raining when I was there, so I didn't get to do a whole lot, but I did still enjoy my time there. And it wasn't like anywhere else I've seen before. So it was just really cool getting to go around and explore and see the wildlife in the park. It was really cool. And I was by myself through this whole ordeal down in Joshua Tree. And that solitude in a beautiful place that I've never been before was incredibly healing, especially through everything that I was going through. And it reminded me of how small I am in the grand scheme of things. It was a very humbling experience. Driving down to San Diego was incredible. I drove a lot of that trip in the dark, mostly because I wanted to spend as much time as I could in Joshua Tree. Going down into San Diego was something magical. I didn't really get to see a ton of it, but there was a lot of lights and you could kind of see the reflection on the water going down. So that was kind of cool. And the next day I was able to explore more. Unfortunately, there was a small craft advisory, which I was supposed to go on a whale watching tour, and it got canceled because of that. But we were able to still loop around and do like a harbor tour. So I was able to tour the harbor and walk around in the waterfront. And I was going to do a lot of stuff outside that day. I also had a jet ski rental that I was supposed to do, but it started pouring down rain. And I was like, okay, well, how long is this going to last? And then I look at my radar and it's like, it's going to last all day. Wonderful. And then I looked at other areas around just to see, how the weather looked elsewhere. And up in Laguna Beach, which is probably like an hour away, it looked like it was clear. And I got up there and I had the most wonderful beach experience with the sun setting, and it was a beautiful time. And I was there for a while, but it was a good day. I did a lot of activities. I had a good time, and it was also a very different landscape. Driving, it was a beach. Driving from desert to beach, completely different. Yet very similar temperatures, but very different. Like it was much more humid, and yeah, it was interesting. And then I drove to Tucson. That was the most beautiful drive I've ever taken in my life. Driving through the mountains in California, Southern California mountains are my heart. Like, I need to go back there. And driving into Arizona was beautiful as well. It's just a totally different environment out there. And I drove straight to Saguaro National Park. And I drove around in there for a while. I took a lot of pictures. I went to the visitor center, and that was, the whole area was so different, vastly different than all of the other areas that I had seen. I had not seen any cacti anywhere else. The cacti there are massive, like twice the size of me. The biodiversity is absolutely wild. I didn't get to see a lot of the animals that were around, but the plants, gosh, it's just cool to see. And everything that is around in that area, New Mexico and Arizona, it's very Spanish influenced. And I actually really want to go back there. That's going to be one of the trips that I want to take for next year. And I realized that, I had been almost avoiding that until I changed my perspective on it. And then I realized, why was I avoiding this? Beauty exists here. And it's so much more than people that aren't from around the area will ever know. And Tucson is just so cute. It is so cute. Then I got on a train in Tucson and I took it to San Antonio, where I was able to get an Uber and go to my cousin's house. And that was my favorite stop by far for the whole trip. And I don't think I went to a national park. I went to the Alamo, And I walked on the river walk, which was so cool. I rode a horse. My cousin is starting to take horse riding lessons, and she is also teaching her daughter to do so. So she wanted me to go ride horses with her. So I was like, what's the most Texas thing I can do? Go and ride a horse. So I went out, rode a horse. And then we ended up going and doing the river walk. And it was just the architecture is so incredible there. Got to learn a little bit about the Alamo. There's music everywhere. And during that time of year, so this was after New Year's. During that time of year, they still have the lights up from Christmas. So it was all decorated out in Christmas lights all down the river. And it was so pretty. And around, I think it was like 9, I think it's 9 or a little after 9, they do a light show on one of the buildings. And it was so fun. And we just went down, took the kids. They were able to dance and play around, and it was just a really fun experience. And then they have bars all down the river, so you can just stop at a river bar, get a drink, and then keep walking because they don't have open canister laws down there. So we were just hanging out and walking around, going up to a bar whenever we wanted to, and getting a drink and continuing downward. It was really cool. And it was totally different than anything that I've ever experienced. And I realized then that every city tells a different story and you just have to go and find it. So I told you about the train getting canceled, my train trip to New Orleans. So I ended up rescheduling back up to Chicago and staying an extra day. We were able to explore the Pearl Brewery, or like the old Pearl. We went to a few ice houses and we just kind of hung out with the kids because she also had to work for part of the day. So she was doing a lot of work. And then I was like, well, I can do podcast stuff because back then I was researching for the podcast. So now my research has gotten a lot faster, but some of my research takes longer because I have to read books. A lot of my research I do by just going to the places and studying in the visitor centers or whatever. But sometimes the stories come in book form and I have to read through. Some of them aren't very long, but still, I'm doing the research from reading the book, and it takes a little longer. But anyway, got on the train and back to Chicago. When I got to Chicago, I was able to be there for 12 hours. So I had a longer period of time. But as I said before, it was raining and it was cold. And so I couldn't really do a lot outside. I did a couple of things, but not a ton outside. And then I went to the Sky Tower and I got a pass there and I did the I did the thing. You go all the way up. They give you a ticket for a beverage and then you can walk around and take pictures of everything around. And it was a little foggy, but it was still you were still able to see down below you, but they have this thing where it tilts you down and you're holding on to these handles and you're looking at glass and then it just tilts you. And it'll go back and forth. Sometimes it'll bring you all the way, like kind of almost horizontal. And there were times where I had to step off of it because I was just like, yeah, this is a little too much for me. But it was still cool and I was able to do that. I went to the History of Human Torture Museum. I don't know why. It was a morbid curiosity. And I was like, this is something that not a lot of people probably go to. So I went there and yeah, not a lot of people would want to go there. But I also learned where certain things came from in horror movies. And I was like, that's what that was from. So very interesting stuff that I learned in there. Still a lot, but it was an interesting step through the history of human torture. From there, I got on the train and I went to Cleveland. I got to Cleveland at like 5 in the morning or something. And then I rented a car and drove down to Cuyahoga National Park. I got to see a couple waterfalls. I did a river hike. I went to the visitor center and explored around there. I got to see some views. I did a lot there. And then I drove back into Cleveland because I had a 2:00 time to go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I was not going to miss because that was one of the things I was really excited about. So I got back there. I was able to go in and explore. I don't know if they still have it now, but they had the SNL pop up for one of their anniversaries. I mean, it was really cool. So I explored all of that. And then I kind of like walked around. I wanted to go to some local spots and check out things. So I was able to do that. I was able to get a hotel room for a short period of time. So I was able to get a little bit of sleep before I had to go back on the train. And I got on the train and I was at my final journey home. And actually, which was very interesting to me, the train home went through Pennsylvania. So I didn't go the same way through West Virginia and Lower Virginia all the way up. I went the northern route. So I went through Pittsburgh, through Cumberland, Maryland, and then down through Western Maryland back to somehow it went down to DC and then back up to Baltimore. Honestly, when I was in Cleveland, the reason why I got the hotel is because I was winding down, I think. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to just go back and get some rest and reflect at home, which I did. And I was able to appreciate the last ride a little bit more because I felt like I was going back home. But I was also seeing one last different stretch of the trip before getting there. What this trip taught me, slow travel really does help you reflect. So it was able to give me some perspective. I was also able to set some goals for myself for the year and reflect on what was going on in my life at that point in time and really think about what my friend would have wanted for me. And instead of grieving, turn that into an energy that he would have loved to have seen, which inspired my journey to good health for this year. America is incredibly diverse. We have just about everything in this country, every different type of terrain. I mean, and I didn't even get to see half of it. But I got to see a bunch of different environments that I've never seen in person before. Conversations with strangers actually matter more than the conversations you have with your friends because strangers can really teach you a thing or two. And as I said before, my whole thing is I like asking the weird, tough questions. I don't like asking the basic questions. I want to get to know what's deep down. So my conversations with strangers are actually sometimes more interesting than my conversations with my friends. Not to diss my friends, because my friends and I have great conversations, but sometimes strangers just tell you the most interesting stories that leave you with some sort of reflection. Nature heals. Am I right? Adventure doesn't require leaving the country. You can see a completely different landscape right in your own country. And the biggest lesson I learned, sometimes the journey becomes the destination. So before I close out this episode, I just want to give some Amtrak tips, some practical tips. Book early if you want to get sleeper accommodations. if you are doing the rail pass, which if you want to save money and you're on a budget and it's only $500 for 10 stops, you can do exactly what I did around the country. $500. Just putting it out there. But I do think that the bougier sleep accommodations are favorable for those really long trips. To each their own. You can do the rail pass and see a lot of America while doing so. Pack layers, please. Also pack a raincoat because you never know what kind of weather you're going to get yourself into. Bring a refillable water bottle. You're allowed to refill your water bottle on the train. They have free potable water. So just bring one of those with you. It's going to save you a lot of money. Download your entertainment before you leave. So I had read this online because Wi-Fi isn't reliable and some trains don't even have it because you're going through areas where there is no civilization, essentially. You're going through an area where humans are not usually there, except when you're on the train. So the Wi-Fi doesn't work. They have it only on a few select trains. I think that only are on the East Coast. From what I read, just download your entertainment beforehand. You could download this podcast episode. Go ahead, download this podcast episode. If you need to download any videos, any movies, any music, get it done before you leave. Carry a portable charger. And what I did, I also brought an extension cord because I could plug in multiple things at once and you want to save a slot for the person that's sitting next to you. So if you bring that extension cord, you're able to plug in all of your stuff and still have that outlet available for the person that's sitting next to you. And that is actually something that I read in Reddit. So thank you to that person on Reddit. Thank you. This is huge. Please spend time in the observation car. My God. Especially if you got a rail pass and your car stinks, because you're going to want to spend all your time. But in reality, it is a beautiful area to sit and see all the scenery. And if your train has an observation car, utilize it. It's beautiful and it's there for a reason. Take time to talk to your fellow passengers and try to eat on the dining car at least once while you're on your journey so that you can meet other people. Meeting people is one of the best parts of being on an Amtrak train. I cannot say enough about that. Don't overpack. Don't be me. I didn't really overpack, but I felt like I did a little bit. Expect delays because it is a part of the experience. You're moving slowly, whatever. But definitely expect those delays because the railroads are run by the cargo lines. So the passenger trains do not have the right of way anywhere. So anywhere that cargo is going through, they're going to get priority on whatever rail that they need to go on because they own the railway. And just embrace it. You're going to be on that train for a long time. You might as well embrace it and do something that means something to you while you're on the train. I wanted to close this episode with a reflection that when I think back on this trip, it really wasn't just a train trip, which honestly, that's what I posted it as. Oh, this is a train trip. I had so much fun, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, it was really a lesson about slowing down. It really reminded me that life isn't measured by how quickly we reach the next destination, but how we experience the miles in between. Every city offered something different. And it was beautiful. It was a great experience. I would love to do other areas on the train again. There were so many different landscapes across America. It's so wild. Every conversation that I had became part of the story. And by the time that I rolled it back into Baltimore, I realized I hadn't just crossed the country. I expanded my perspective. And I would like for you to think about that one adventure that you've been putting off. If you have a train story that you would like to share, please email me at roxysworldadventures@gmail.com and it might show up on this podcast. Tune in for next week and please follow Roxy's World Adventures for more stories where history, travel, healing, and the unexplained collide. Explore on.